speaking, and is an essential part of everyday student life. Being able to get from where you live to where you study is very, very important, especially for students of UWE who live in the centre. And Bristol is notorious nationwide for problems with its buses, high taxi fares, and no parking. So the question is, to you, as Mayor, what will you do to improve transport in the city, specifically for students?
Okay, well, thank you very much. You have my sympathies. I'm a bus user, and there's nothing worse than standing at a bus stop on a cold, wet night waiting for a bus that doesn't come. And that's true across the whole city. And the real problem is getting home at night as well, isn't it? Because the buses more or less stop at about 10:15. So you can be there at a cold, wet bus stop for well over half an hour waiting for some way of getting home. The train network is run down, and not everyone can cycle. There's a fair number of people like me who are absolutely scared of the other road users. So what can a mayor do? Well, the government can devolve powers over transport, but it has to be working with the other local councils in the area. And that's what I would want to do. We would have the power to make sure that the buses run where we want them, at the time we want them, and at the fares we want them. And that's really what it's all about, having control over the transport network. So yes, that's what I would do. So thank you. And I'm sorry I'm a bit brief, but I have to catch a train.
Okay, no, there you go. I was really taken just a few weeks ago when, well, a few months ago now, when I got caught in the gridlock in the middle of town. If any of you were aware of this, it was like the end of the world.
It took me 4 hours to
really
get home.
It felt like the apocalypse.
Yeah.
So one of the things that struck me was, however we talk about transport in the city, just how fragile our connectivity and our transport system is in Bristol. And we can talk about the history, but we can also talk about the promises that have been made to sort it out, but we still have an incredibly fragile transport system, which is frightening. That was on the basis of a traffic light running out of phase. We've also had warnings from a number of places about food shocks, environmental change. I mean, if we had if we had another kind of social shock, I think we'd be in a horrific situation in the city. Working with what I'd like to do is certainly look at ticketing that goes across different modes of transport, a single flat fare for Bristol. We can negotiate that with our current providers, and making sure that some of our tickets, in terms of giving flexibility and dynamism to our ability to use our public transport network, last for a period of time, not just one ticket per bus, but you buy a ticket and it's in place for a period of time, so that we can have much more dynamism around that. But I think too, there's a way of working. I met someone, a very senior member of our bus network recently, and the question I asked them was, what do you need from the rest of the city to be able to flourish in what you do as a public transport provider? And the ironic thing is that question has not been asked. Public transport is not just a product of buses running on time, that's really important, but it's also about safety on the streets. It's also about the nature of relationship between staff and the public using those services as well. And I think we have a public transport network that's felt under siege. I think too, when we talk about taxis, which is something else that was mentioned, our taxi drivers are pretty disillusioned at the moment. I'm being told that one of the biggest impediments to them offering a quality service, maybe even reducing prices, around the fact they have one MOT centre where they can register their cars, which means that if they fail their MOT, they're off the road for a number of weeks. There's a massive impact on them. Sorry?
Just time to wrap up.
Okay, yeah. So, and we've talked about parking as well. You know, the thing in RPZs, there are pros and cons to RPZs, but cutting through bureaucracy is not the same as cutting through communities. And when you don't listen and you don't include people in the decisions you make about the city, you just do it because you want to do it, you leave people feeling the democracy undermined, and you leave them feeling disillusioned. There's lots of people in the city feeling like this after the last few years.
Yeah, transport. It is a massive problem right across the city, just about anywhere you go, not just central Bristol. How can we deal with that? Well, parking was mentioned. I will mention something about that first. Next door to the flats that I live in, a small student accommodation was built. There's about 18, 20 students live in there. It's great, and there's no problems with the students. Trouble is, there was absolutely no parking provisions made whatsoever for those additional people. Now, and this is what I'm seeing across the city a lot, is we see a lot of office blocks being built, we see a lot of student accommodation being built, but what we're not seeing is any additional parking spaces for the many thousands of additional people that are coming into the city. We have to realise that although we want to try and take as many cars off the road as possible, we have to realise is that they are a necessity for an awful lot of people. And again, not everybody can cycle or take a bus or go by train. The bus system in this city is diabolical. I'd say probably 9 out of 10 people who speak to me about the buses speak to me in a negative form about it. Mainly about how buses are delayed or they just don't turn up. The cost of travelling on a bus, wasn't that long ago that I went to Rome for a rugby match, and for €1 I had unlimited travel around the city on their bus network. Now that to me was value for money. The buses weren't particularly good, they were crowded, but I didn't mind, it was only €1. Why can't we do something like that in this city? Taxi fares, yeah, we do have to bear in mind when we talk about taxis and taxi drivers, is that they only earn when they've got a fare in the back of their car, and they don't always have a fare in the back of their car. What I'd like to see is possibly a cap or some fixed prices for taxis, specific journeys across the city. Thank you.
Yeah, here.
Thank you very much.
In 2015, I stood as the Green Party candidate for the parliamentary elections, and one of the policies that the Green Party was proposing was to provide free local travel for all young people. And we costed that would have cost about £4 billion per year, which we were going to pay for by putting some taxes on some of the very rich people and ask them to contribute a bit more towards the country. To do that in Bristol, unfortunately, will cost something like £250 million per year. I don't think any of the mayoral candidates will have that sort of money, but what we can do is we can start to look at, if we look at public transport, for instance, at the moment there is a 30% discount on bus travel for students, but that's not enough because the bus fares are so expensive in this city. And I think we come back to this point that we need to start talking to the universities. It's been mentioned a few times about how much money they've got coming into their systems. If we were to arrange a situation where we got up to 10,000 students from this city travelling on the buses, that is a massive source of income for the bus company. And we should be talking with the bus company as how much further discount they might be willing to give to get the extra income from all you students either jumping on the bus and making use of it. The other thing I was also quickly add, Marvin mentioned about single flat fare. We also need to do away with the zoning system where we got £4 being paid for the inner city, but if you go slightly beyond that, beyond the city, it goes up to £6.50 for a day ride, and the only reason it goes up to £6.50 is because there's only one bus company that operates in that outer area. We need to stop bus companies taking advantage of their monopoly, and we need to start looking at what we can do to bring bus services back under public control, so that when we get the money from the bus fares, we can invest it back into our public transport system.
Thank you.
I think a lot has been said actually already, particularly about the buses and the ticketing and the flat rates. So what I think I want to add to it is that there are a number of unused railway lines across our city, and they've been sat unused since I was a kid. And these need to be brought back into use. There's one at Ashton, Portishead. Been talking about opening Portishead line for years and years and years. It needs to be opened. When Abbey Wood, I remember when that was grass just up the road, but when Abbey Wood was opened, the idea that they would get a train station there from Temple Meads, it was part of the development. So there is something about when development comes in, the transport and systems need to be thought about, and it's like that hasn't happened in Bristol for many, many years. Having said that, actually most students, I think, are probably going to be using the buses. So that, in the immediate sort of future, is where I think the savings and the kind of the discussions need to be had.
Cool.
Okay, so when I was a student here at UWE, I ran for student, the UESU 3 times, and the big topic was always about transport. It was always the U-links. Can I swear? Shit. The U-links were shit. We actually had it on posters, and the U-links are shit. And everyone knew it. And year after year after year, the politicians, i.e. the council, this UESU, would promise that it would be sorted out, and nothing ever got done. It'd always be the same. So I think it's time that we start, in a general sense, try to promote a more transparent and more open and democratic process to actually sorting out the transport. Number one, I think Tony mentioned it there about making the buses public. I've lived in Bristol nearly 10 years and it's not got any better really. First is absolutely atrocious, and someone mentioned earlier about having a monopoly. Take it back off them, make the buses public, make them public. I really believe in public ownership over our transport systems for the good of people, not just to make money off people and make first shareholders really, really rich. A little bit on RPZ, I think Marvin mentioned about the democratic process, which has completely been run roughshod over. You speak to lots of Bristolians all over the city, they're angry. They're angry because they weren't included in the debate. Whatever your feelings on RPZ were or are, people should be consulted with, and they haven't been. In terms of the student stuff, as a student, 4 years at UWE, I cycled every day to uni, and to be honest, that was my best way of getting to uni. I beat the cars and the buses actually, and now there's that fantastic cycle path which goes from the back of Frenchay through the new housing stuff, and then down to St Werburgh's. Actually, it's much better. I'd suggest people get on their bike basically. It's much healthier as well. Get through nature, see some stuff, see the world.
Never thought I'd see you agree with George on that one.
I'll try this time. I think we need to think of about a much bigger picture for this city. I hear about parking and traffic jams. In the 50 years I've been in the city, it's got worse and worse and worse, and nobody has grasped that nettle, and nobody's grasped that nettle because they haven't dared. Because if you start interfering with people's cars, they get really angry. And yet, in a democracy, sometimes you have to take some tough decisions in order to take people over that bridge so they can see a better future. And my future is of a city that is zero carbon by 2050, and I got all party agreement for that. That's what should be driving us. We should be driven by making a city that everybody wants to live in, that's a healthy city, that has clean air, and that is not expensive to move around. We have no public transport. We have private transport. It was deregulated in the 80s. I cannot control that. I can only negotiate, and I have done so in order to get lower bus fares than we did have. So I want a city that's a playable city, a city where the streets belong to the people as much as they do to the cars. I want a city there where you feel absolutely safe walking and cycling around. I'm never late because I cycle, and it keeps me fit up to a point until I lose my voice. So let's think about the big picture instead of bitching about parking and the little things that annoy people for a short while, because when you get over it, you'll have a much better life, and I would expect every young person to see that because the kids do.
Thank you very much.